What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Talkin' History with Kevin. I, of course, am your host, Kevin. Today we've got a really big treat because this episode is actually my final project for History of the Motion Picture with Dr. Nicholas Schlegel at Alfred University. I'm sorry, first of all, that I have not been on YouTube in a little bit. I've been doing my studies, writing articles and stuff. Be sure to check out my blog. It's on Google Blogspot. It'll be Talkin' History with Kevin. Content every Saturday is the plan. I just started it a couple weeks ago, so be sure to check that out. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, hit the notification button. And so what are we talking about today? So we're going to talk about two films that are from the same series and completely intertwined in a political sense as well. Of course, I am talking about, not that you guys already knew that because I never say anything on Facebook anymore. Sorry. Anyway, so what am I talking about? I am talking about the films Rocky IV from 1985, and I am talking about 2018's Creed II. So, of course, these are the sports dramas that we all know and love, but I wanted to take a new angle. I wanted to, compare the films together, but also compare them to the landscape of their times. So I'm going to try to keep this as short but long enough as possible because if any of you know me, you know that I like to get right to the point and stuff. So why am I still trying to beat around the bush? Anyway, so Rocky IV, 1985. So we've got Sylvester Stallone reprising his role of Rocky Balboa, the heavyweight champion boxer. We've got Carl Weathers reprising his role as former heavyweight champion boxer Apollo Creed. We've got Dolph Lundgren as Ivan Drago, Talia Shire as Adrienne Balboa, Rocky's wife, and I believe it's Burt Young as Paulie. If I butchered that, I'm sorry for all you moviegoers, especially you, Dr. Schlegel, because I love you. Anyway, so what type of political landscape is around Rocky IV? So 1985, you had Mikhail Gorbachev. He had just come into the premiership of the Soviet Union, of course. He really came out of the woodwork, introducing his programs of Glasnost, which means more openness for the Soviet people, allowing them to, be more open with how they felt about the landscape in Russia and the other Soviet republics. And you had perestroika, a restructuring of the Soviet system. And you had demokratiya, I think, is how you pronounce it. And that means democratization. So making things more democratic within the communist Soviet Union. What else was going on? Well, the Cold War wasn't over yet. The Cold War was still very much alive. Ronald Reagan was still the president of the United States. So, there was still tough talk against communism, and there was still a lot of hatred, I think, between the two ideologies of the capitalist West and the communist Eastern Bloc in Eastern Europe. the wall hadn't come down yet in Berlin. Things were still very tense. And that's where Rocky IV comes in. So the film starts out with Rocky had just beat Clubber Lang in Rocky III, and him and Apollo, he owed Apollo a favor for having helped him win back his title, and that's where Ivan Drago comes in. Apollo sees this Soviet star, this indestructible boxer from the big communist bear. And he thinks to himself, well, wait a minute, it's still us versus them, so I want to go out there and basically kick this guy's ass to show how much better America is than the Soviet Union. So Apollo kind of goes into this it kind of seems like he really doesn't know what he's getting into. And Rocky reiterates this to him as they're preparing Apollo to go out there and fight this guy. Rocky says, look, we don't know too much about this guy you're fighting, so why don't we postpone? Apollo's like, no. It's us versus them. Come on, let's go beat them. And if you guys are familiar with Rocky IV, you'll know that Apollo goes out there and Drago actually kills him in the second round with that punching power. And later in the film, it'll come out, you'll see that, he's been doing steroids. There was a lot of doping during the Soviet, or in the Soviet Union at that time with their athletes. So it wasn't really a surprise to me anyway, because I am a scholar of Soviet sports, or Cold War sport. Yeah. Anyway, that's a topic for another episode. So yeah, Apollo dies. Rocky originally he didn't really want any part of fighting this guy, even though the press really wanted Rocky, the heavyweight champion, to fight Drago. It was Apollo first, and Apollo died. But now Rocky now has this hatred toward Drago and toward the Soviet Union. And there's a heated matchup as they're announcing their fight that is to take place in Moscow on Christmas Day in 1985. Don't worry, this didn't actually happen. It would have been epic if it had, but so Rocky goes to Russia to train after all of this. And well, let me back it up a little bit to the heated exchange at the press conference for Rocky versus Drago. So Drago's manager, he's a member of the Politburo of the Soviet Union. So he's, touting how, this big Russian fighter is gonna just trounce this little American so-called champion. And Paulie's got some choice words for this gentleman. He actually he says stuff like, oh, at least we don't keep people behind a wall with machine guns, a reference to the Berlin Wall. Who am I? I'm the unsilent majority, big mouth. That's one of my favorite lines from the film. I can actually, Dr. Schlegel, you'll be proud of this when you watch this. I can actually probably recite every single line from Rocky IV Just like you said, you can recite every word from Jaws. So, Dr. Schlegel, yeah, you'll be proud of me for this one. Long story short, Rocky goes to Russia. He trains in Siberia, which is shown to be pretty much how it is. It's a cold wasteland. Nobody likes going there. Not many have lived to tell the tale throughout history if they're sent to Siberia. We all know that from the history books. And Rocky goes into the fight, and it's a hostile crowd in Moscow, of course. I mean, the Soviet national anthem is playing. There are banners in the arena with Lenin, Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, who helped Marx write the Communist Manifesto. So there's a lot of mise en scène. Dr. Schlegel, you'll be proud of me for using the term there. There's a lot of mise en scène in that fight scene, just like there was for Apollo vs. Drago. Like, Apollo vs. Drago had a lot of like America type of mise en scène. Now in Moscow, you've got the, pro-Soviet mise en scène. You got the big red star, the sickle and hammer, all kinds of stuff going on there. And you've got a hostile crowd when Rocky walks in. And as the fight begins, Drago comes out just absolutely punching Rocky. The crowd's going nuts because, their guys winning the fight. And about halfway through the fight, Rocky starts to change the momentum. He's starting to, land more punches and stuff. And all of a sudden, the crowd starts chanting, Rocky, Rocky, Rocky. And this is something that pre-Gorbachev times you would not have heard. Like, you would not have heard, like, pro-American sentiment for anything pro-American. So, this was really a sign of the change of rhetoric going on in the Cold War. And also, along with this, Rocky wins the fight. Everyone's still chanting his name. And Rocky utters, this is the last line of the film, Rocky utters the phrase, "If I can change and you can change, everybody can change." And everyone starts applauding. Even Gorbachev. Gorbachev is portrayed in this film, and he's applauding Rocky along with the rest of the Politburo of the Soviet Union. So, that's a sign in and of itself of the change in rhetoric going on at this point in time. The movie did absolutely well. It was a big hit, and it really sent a message about the changing times as far as Cold War culture went. So, now that I've talked about Rocky IV a little bit, let's talk about Creed II. So, Creed II is made in 2018, but let's rewind about 4 years, okay? So, what happened in 2014? Russia, the Russian Federation, it's not the Soviet Union anymore. I think a lot of us know that. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. The little green men came out of the Russian military bases and seized Ukrainian targets. So Russia annexed Crimea into its territory. The war in the Donbass started. The war in the Donbass erupted into what is now the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Russo-Ukrainian War, if you will. And in 2018, this war in the Donbass is still raging. It's a very tense situation over there, and it's even more tense now from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So Creed 2 comes during this kind of middle gap between Russia's annexation of Crimea and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Their all-out invasion of Ukraine. And Apollo Creed's son, Adonis, he has just won the world championship as the film starts. He's on top of the world. Him and Rocky are this dynamic duo. But meanwhile, as this is going on over in, of all places, Kiev, Ukraine, you've got Ivan Drago, the disgraced Soviet boxer, who, as a result of his disgrace, has been relocated to the Ukraine. And he's training his son, Victor, to be basically this machine as he once was. And as the movie progresses, Drago's son challenges Adonis. Rocky does not want any part of this. Again, he didn't want any part of the Apollo versus Ivan Drago fight. He doesn't want any part of this fight that Adonis intends on accepting against Victor Drago. And so as a result, Adonis has to go with Tony Duke Evers, Apollo Creed's original trainer. His son, he decides to go with him as a trainer for this fight. And as the fight begins, the first fight in the movie between Adonis and Victor begins, there's a heated crowd at the Barclays Center in New York. And, it's, anti-Russia. There's, the same kind of hostility as the first fight in Rocky IV. Today's climate, there's a lot of anti-Russia rhetoric, and, you'll find no shortage of it now that Russia's invaded Ukraine. But anyway, long story short, that fight ends up being a disqualification for Victor Drago as he hits Adonis while he's down and stuff like that. And actually, as the movie progresses, Adonis has his first kid, but Adonis wants really to accept Victor Drago's second challenge to rematch. And this time, Rocky is on board. There's a big training scene between the two of them out in the desert. But this time, the fight is to be in Moscow. And all while Adonis is training for this second fight against Victor Drago, Ivan Drago is kind of being welcomed back into the picture in Russia. So is his son, Victor. And this all culminates in the rematch in Moscow. And in Moscow, same as Rocky IV, there is that Cold War tension of, Russia against the U.S., pro-Russia. You've got Russian flags all over the place. The mise-en-scène really helps tell the story. And it really shows. So, and in this film as well, Victor comes out, he starts, winning rounds and stuff. And then Adonis turns the tide of it. And Adonis ends up winning, but the Russian crowd is, more accepting. that Adonis wins. And honestly, Ivan and Victor are not disgraced this time, only by Ivan's wife, Ludmila. She leaves the picture, like she did in Rocky IV. But yeah, it really is kind of the same story, just a little bit of a different backdrop. And I remember seeing Creed 2 in the movie theater, and I remember just, because I wasn't alive for Rocky IV to come out in theaters. I was like I'm minus 13 at that point. And so yeah, I think that Creed 2, in my opinion, it was probably, besides the movie 1917, it was one of the best movies I've ever seen in theaters. I remember it did pretty good. And I believe, from what I hear, I haven't seen it yet, but the movie Creed 3 is also based kind of around Victor and Ivan again, just in a different capacity. I haven't seen it yet again, so we'll see how that pans out. I want to try to go see it within the next few weeks. So maybe I'll do another episode on that. And kind of follow up this one. But, I really think these two movies tie very well together in that, there's the original Cold War culture from Rocky IV. You've got the renewed Cold War culture in Creed 2. And in a sense, I mean, you look at pop culture, if you look close enough, you could make the argument the Cold War mentality never ended. I mean, that's a whole different episode, book, topic, whatever. But you can make the argument that culture never really went away. So that's really what I wanted to get into with this final project. I wanted to, really get into, yes, I wanted to, make sure that I stated how well the movies did in theaters. I wanted to make sure that, that we covered all the ideologies and stuff like that. But really, the meat of the subject is the Cold War. The Cold War is probably one of the biggest, times, like one of the most important times in human history. And, through my own studies, that's really what, that's what I want people to understand, is that, you can find the Cold War almost anywhere if you look close enough. And so yeah, that's really what I wanted to talk about. As far as this episode goes, that's all I've got. For those of you watching who are my classmates in History of the Motion Picture, I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys want to see more, like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. For the rest of my followers, thank you as always for watching. Also, if you're new to my channel, again, like, subscribe, comment, whatever you want. So yeah, that is all I've got for you guys today, and I hope that you have a blessed evening. So, till next time, goodbye.